When I was a kid, it was really easy to sort people into heroes and villains. And as I've grown older, I've realized that the waters are a little more murky. Heroes have flaws, and villains often have noble motivations. Sorry. So heroes have flaws, and villains often have noble motivations. Sometimes the difference between a hero and a villain is merely a matter of perspective. And it's with that lens in mind, I'm going to ask you to travel back in time with me to the summer of 1993. And I know time travel isn't possible, but for those of you who are parents, it often feels like it is. I have a 15-year-old son, and as I watch him navigate high school, I see him walk along this knife's edge of being confident and being cocky. And it's like he's holding up a mirror and saying, "Dad, remember, this is you." And, that's a really interesting experience to have. I'm sorry, I'm really losing my train of thought tonight. So I was a confident, more cocky kid than my son. My son was confident, and I'm cocky, and I was cocky. And so I had a lot going for me at that time. I was coming into my own as an athlete. I had my first girlfriend, and I'd done really well my freshman year of high school. I had a 94 GPA. I was in advanced classes with all of my friends. And but there was a shadow hanging over me that summer, and that shadow's name was Mad Dog Martin. Now, Mad Dog sounds like your typical high school bully, and let me tell you, that was not the case. Mad Dog stands about this tall, and it turns out that she's a woman in her 50s. So Mad Dog was my high school English teacher, Jill Martin, and she had a reputation. She was the strictest teacher in school. She was the hardest grader. She had super high expectations, and I was a little intimidated. In fact, she started my summer off a little bit. It was a tough start to my summer because I'd gotten a letter in the mail that said, "Welcome to my class. Here's a list of books. Please read one." And I said, "This is my summer. You are invading my summer. This is my space." And I was really upset about it. But I said, you know what? First impressions are really, really important. So I'm going to pick the longest book on this list, and I'm going to show you. So I read The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. And I knew I had to do an oral report, so I started putting it together. And I wrote this sweeping narrative about the Joad family's journey from Oklahoma to California, their escape from the Dust Bowl, their survival through the Depression. And I felt like it was good, but it wasn't quite good enough. So I found a CD that we had in the library, Ken Burns' Civil War series. It'd come out a couple years earlier. So I set my whole speech to this song, and I timed it to the second. I had every word set in every measure, and I was so proud of this. And I said, I am going to nail this, and I am going to be smooth sailing for the rest of the year. So it comes a day for my presentation, and I get up and I press play. I bring the boombox with me from home, press play on the CD player, and the music begins, and I deliver the best damn speech Canton High School has ever seen. And I can't wait to get my grade because it's going to be this great vindication of what an awesome student I am. And a couple days later, I get it back, and it's got a red 85 with a circle around it. Now, an 85 is not a bad grade, but I was like this, perfectionist. And it was just so disheartening. I thought, if I delivered the best damn speech that Canton High School has ever seen, and that's only an 85, what can I possibly do? Well, the year only got more challenging. Mrs. Martin assigned 80 to 100 pages a night of A Tale of Two Cities. I mean, it was a challenge just to get through every day. But there was an end in sight. In June, 10th grade would end, and I would have a new teacher for Advanced English 11. Only I didn't. Assignments were changed, and suddenly Mrs. Martin was going to be my teacher again in 11th grade. We actually had a third of the class drop out from the advanced track. We went from 24 to 16. But I stuck with it. I said, no, I'm not going to let this woman deter me from my plan. I am going to stay in the advanced track. Well, somewhere along the way in that year, she introduced a unit on journalism. And she said, I want to produce an issue of the school newspaper. It hadn't been done in decades. And she asked me to be the sports editor. And so I jumped in, and it turned out I loved it. And she trusted me with more and more, and we started working on this. We put out an issue, and it was amazing. I loved every second of it. And then at the end of the unit, she said, I'd love to keep doing this, but we have other things to cover. If you want to continue to work on the newspaper, we're going to have to do it after school. And so a number of us did. And I found myself in the hour between when classes ended and when my track practice began in Mrs. Martin's room, discussing story ideas, talking about interview techniques, and doing layout. And that spring, I had a decision again. A lot of my friends took AP English and took the AP exam to earn college credit. And I decided to take electives in journalism and public speaking because Mrs. Martin was teaching them. She encouraged me to pursue an internship with the Watertown Daily Times. I worked in their sports department throughout high school on a part-time basis and in college. And I ended up having a 20-year career in sports journalism and in athletic communications and marketing. And while, like many of us over the COVID pandemic, I had a change in heart in what I wanted to do with my life, spending every night and weekend in a press box rather than home with my family became more and more challenging. So I changed careers. But one of the benefits of my new job is they've given me the freedom to teach a sports writing internship at St. Lawrence, where I continue to teach college students many of the lessons that Mrs. Martin taught me. Now, I know I established at the beginning time travel is not possible. But if it were, first I'd go back about 8 minutes ago and fix all my little omissions. But then I'd go back 30 years and I'd talk to myself and say, Aaron, it's an 85. Get over it. I know you want to find a villain in this story, but the villain in the story isn't Mrs. Martin, it's you. And 30 years from now, you're going to be on a stage in front of hundreds of people, and Mrs. Martin will be in the audience. And you get to tell her what a hero she is to you. Thank you.